What's up? At one Catholic school in Melbourne, Australia, among other curious books, we have Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. The foreword is written by Robin DiAngelo. He seems to believe every white person is inherently racist and that if they don't, after reading this book, take action and get uncomfortable about undoing inherent racism, they are part of the white supremacy group. He says that expecting any easy answers from the author is especially arrogant of any reader if expected from a BIPOC. BIPOC is of course black, indigenous and person of colour. The author, Layla, welcomes all readers to the 28-day journey this book will take you through to explore and unpack your relationship with white supremacy and how you participate in the oppressive system of white supremacy. Despite growing up in Cardiff in the UK, Layla can only count on one hand where she actually experienced racism in her entire life. She lives in Qatar, but unfortunately some of her family live in the white supremacist UK and in white-dominated societies, suffering the extended horrors of the enslavement of her ancestors. I mean, the woman has absolutely no understanding of the history of slavery at all. Not only did white people end most slavery around the world, her Muslim ancestors have a very rich history of enslaving not just African people, but hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of white people, including castrated males and underage women, for harems. Layla attempts to define white supremacy. It's not just Nazis. It's in all of us. It's dominant. To get the most out of this book, you need to be truthful with yourself. I quote, "If you go deep, you will tell the real, raw, ugly truths so you can get to the rotten core of your internalized white supremacy. You need commitment because the book makes you feel like, quote, you are waking up to a virus that has been living inside you all these years. And, quote, go through the course more than once. And importantly, keep asking yourself, why are you internally a white supremacist?" I wrote this, I don't know why I'm laughing. Feeling the feelings which are Feeling the feelings which are an appropriate human response to racism and oppression is an important part of the process to rehumanize yourself. Alright, rehumanize. Subhuman. You start to realize that you weren't feeling these feelings before because you had shut down a part of your humanity in order to participate in white supremacy. White supremacy. White supremacy. Oh God, you can only say the white supremacy so many times. Okay, now we get into the 28-day challenge. Every day has a term for the reader to focus on. Layla provides a definition of the term, then she gives examples of this term, and then why it's important you work on this term within yourself, and then you are supposed to make journal entries, and she gives you some prompts for each journal entry on every day. Day 1. What is white privilege? We learn that white privilege is downriver of white supremacy. Science has proven that the concept of race is not a biological fact, but rather a social concept. Layla then takes us through the postmodern hierarchy of privileges from being gay to straight female to person of colour female and so forth. One is more oppressed than the next or the other way around. Day 2. White fragility or melting down as an adult because you are accused of being a white supremacist comes about due to lack of exposure to conversations about racism when you were a child. If you can't talk about the ways in which you are unintentionally complicit in racism, you have, you guessed it, white fragility. Pop off to bed and count black sheep. Day 5, white superiority. If you read books by white authors, you have white superiority. If you don't think African American Vernacular English or AAVE is the proper way to speak, then you have white superiority. Again, this is where Layla doesn't know much about history or how all the AAVE actually stems from Old England, including axe instead of ask, and even cracker, redneck. Also the way of misusing grammar in saying we be, you be, they be, instead of he is, you are, and they are. Also comes from England or southern parts of England. As Thomas Sowell points out in his impressive book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals. Day 6, White Exceptionalism. if your kids play with non-white kids, it is very likely you still have white exceptionalism and are only one rung down the ladder from white supremacists. This is real. Day 7, review. Layla is not giving you a day off on day 7 because, I quote, "On day 7, we do not take a day off because BIPOC do not get to take a day off from, in brackets, your white supremacy." Day 11 is about anti-blackness against black children. Layla provides examples of this anti-blackness towards children. 2 are, if you want to birth or adopt black children, you have anti-blackness towards black children. What? Let me read that again. If you want to birth or adopt black children, you have anti-blackness towards black children. If you want to save black children from Africa or in your own community, you are anti-black. Don't forget to journal about how you have wanted to save black children. I've done an actual journal entry for you. When I toured Jacinta Price, who talked a lot about saving Aboriginal children in the Northern Territory, I was actually projecting my inner white supremacist. I will never talk about or do anything to bring awareness to the hidden suffering of so many Aboriginal children in Australia. Day 12, you and racist stereotypes. Here's a cracker. Quote, "Though a BIPOC can hold a prejudice against a white person, they could not be racist towards a white person." Oh, I need to do some white privilege meditation. Day 13, you and cultural appropriation. Here we go. Of course, Layla mentions music. I quote, "Music, the appropriation of black music styles, often filtered through a white lens." Okay, as someone who spent 20-odd years studying music at the highest levels and music history and learning the most difficult jazz and classical guitar pieces around, this one is personal. Maybe it's more personal that she's calling me a white supremacist. Without going into specifics of music theory and leading notes and all that jazz, all the jazz theory came from Europe. You could, if you were a bit of a prick, claim that everyone was culturally appropriating Bach and European composers, but jazz and rap and every music style stands on the shoulders of those who came before us. And you can trace rap back to Germany and the old and unusual style of Sprechsinger or spoken song. So it's fine for everyone to use the guitar, which originated in Italy, and that's not cultural appropriation, but using the didgeridoo is regarded as cultural appropriation. Anyway, back to learning how we can undo our innate white supremacy. After you've listened to culturally appropriated jazz, make a journal entry for day 13 with this prompt. How have I profited from, socially or financially, from cultural appropriation? Day 15, white apathy. Here's an example of where white apathy shows up. Quote, using your mental health and personal issues to opt out of doing the work, ignoring the fact that there are BIPOCs who also have mental health and personal issues who cannot opt out of being at the receiving end of your racism. Lovely. Day 16 is all about white centering. Creating spaces for only people of colour and getting upset about this racial segregation is also an example of white fragility as a result of white centering, as a result of white supremacy. Day 17, you and tokenism. Adding more persons of colour is tokenistic. Adding more books in libraries by black authors is tokenistic. Day 19, you and optical allyship. You, quote, transfer the benefits of your white privilege to those who lack it, end quote. You are getting closer to being an ally. Day 21, three weeks have flown by. Day 25, you and your family. A little bit Engels here. Work on your family and often. Don't let them be white supremacists. Don't excuse racism and don't keep the peace. Day 27, you and losing privilege. Take up less space and allow BIPOC to take up more space so that they can be heard and their leadership can be followed. End quote. Journal about how you will take up less space. Day 28, I made it. I'm no longer racist. No, apparently I have to do this work for the rest of my life. Well, there you have it. This book has gone into an unknown number of schools across the world, Western world, in Australia, and read by young people who are forming their views on the world and developing their identities. Throw in such English tasks such as this real example for a grade 10 English test in a Melbourne boys' school. Racism makes it extremely hard for individuals to feel like they belong in Australia. 45-minute test. And you get the situation of white people coming up to random young black people to apologise. A few years ago, I was out with some interesting folks after a book launch and we met a 20-year-old Sudanese man at a bar. He told us how his peers who were white and people he didn't know at all would come up to him and apologise for being white and for his suffering and the suffering of his ancestors. He began talking about Jordan Peterson and such, and as I had recently toured Peterson, we chatted about that. He confessed he thought that the apologies from the young white Australian peers were pathetic and very unnecessary. And in chatting with him, I was trying to get to the root of where he had developed some views. And it all came about because he watched one little thing that led to another thing, which is the same thing that happened to me. So if you see me and white supremacy on a Year 12 literature or psychology course, be rather concerned. But also be aware there is a whole generation of young people wanting to understand the world around them, and they are learning from people such as Peterson, Amala, Zuby, and many others. Finally, the True Arrow Academy is nearly ready for a soft launch. Then lots of content needs to be added over the next year and then over the years ahead. Working hard on it, lots to do. Peace out, Sam.